Keep it going. Do not stop. We love Mary.
I live in a magical world, courtesy of the feminine divine, guided by... Closer, thank you, I'll start again. I live in a magical world, courtesy of the feminine divine, guided by the fairies, servants to higher angels. And on and off during my life, I've met people that felt like they came from a past life. That feeling when you lock eyes with a stranger and you go, I've known you before. Or sometimes having a whole life story come into my mind, and then if I share it, they say, I remember that too. So let me tell you one experience about a past life. So I was in Rosarito, Mexico, looking after my oldest friend, Susan, who was dying of cancer. And we went to the clinic, and the oncologist had prescribed 4 treatments of really heavy chemotherapy. And it's the second treatment, and there's this handsome young doctor who was really kind. And when she said she liked the soup, because by then she could barely eat anything, he found some for her to take home. So that was a Friday, and on the Sunday, oh, sorry, I forgot to say, in Mexico, I don't know if they do it here, after the chemo, they give you IV of vitamins to perk you up. And she seemed fine on that day, but on the Sunday, she was like really, really ill. So I phoned the oncologist, and he told the young doctor to come to the house with an IV bag of vitamins. And they did really perk her up. And she had this intelligent young man talking to her while the IV was dripping through, and she really sparkled. And on the Tuesday, she died. And he was so new to his profession that her dying really shook him up. And we'd already connected phones because he had, come to her house. And so he said, would you come out for a coffee with me? So I went out for a coffee and we talked for 3 hours. Now, in Mexico, there's a lot of respect for older women. And he was so much younger than me, but it felt really natural there to be talking to him and spending time with him. So but what happened was, it was very embarrassing and disconcerting, was I fell in love with this man who was 40 years younger than me. And nothing happened. He was just wanting to talk or text about his being upset about his first patient who died, right? So one morning, I just saw this picture of this woman with long hair bending over, making love to the young man who was about 50 when I was nearly 70. So I thought, that's another life. And that explains these strong feelings. So I went out with the companion of my friend, who was her birthday. And on the way, we played a CD of 1950s rock and roll songs. And there was a song by the Platters, if anyone remembers them. And it's called My Prayer. And it had words like, you come into my heart, and I hope you'll still be at the end of my prayer. And I started feeling really inexplicably sad. And I got back to the house, and I sat on the sofa, and I just felt overwhelmed by grief. And suddenly, I looked down, and a chill went through me, because I saw the face of the doctor in the image of this body lying on the floor, dead, cold, and white, and wearing an ancient helmet. And I picked up a notebook and a pen, and I wrote this long poem that told the story of, it was the time when matriarchy was being overtaken by patriarchy, and he'd been betrothed to her, much more normal, of course, to have an older woman in those days. And she was a queen, and he was a prince. And he died after a few weeks in a freak accident. And her grief had been frozen for thousands of years with that moment that he was laid in front of her dead after the accident. So what I experienced then was, I'm crying and grieving her tears, her story, writing out her story. But in real life, the doctor stopped texting me. He just needed a chat. And so I was grieving my infatuation. And here's the interesting thing for me, is I've had depression since I was 10 years old. And I'd been depressed when my friend was dying. When I released the grief of that apparent past life and the sorrow at losing this friendly contact in a difficult time, I sensed that I was not going to get depressed again after 60 years of depression, on and off. And that was October 2021, and I have never had a day of depression since. Thank you.
Give it up for Mary. Good on you. Congratulations.